Okay, this is the breakdown and reassembly maintenance, if you will, of a Barient 28 winch. This is a non-self-tailing model, 2-speed. So probably give you a good idea of different types of winches as well. But this is just going to focus on the Barient 28 out of my boat, which is a 1975 Islander. I'm guessing this was original equipment, so it's one of the older winches. And to start, just going to go over the materials I'm going to use and the directions or schematics that I found. The best I found so far was from this website here, if it focuses there, if you can read that. And that is a CNC, I guess an owner's website. And they have probably instructions for about, 50 different models of winches, probably most of the Barient winches. And the reason I found these so good was that the schematic was really clear. And you could download it like I did and blow it up and actually read, upside down, actually read all the numbers fairly clearly and the descriptions of the items and see the pictures. It was actually a pretty good schematic. Others that I found weren't as clear as these. Additionally, like I said, they have a bunch of other ones. Here's a Model 21 winch schematic. It's pretty well blown up there for you. That's how it prints right off the computer. These, by the way, I just downloaded it and or saved it to the computer and then printed it out, and it came out this size. And directions for the Model 21 there. This was a Model 22. That's how it prints out of the off the website. And again, just save that file to your computer, and you can print it like such, a little bit larger for us older blind folk out here. So that's the schematic and the directions that I went. I'm not necessarily going to follow these directions, although they are fairly good. Some of the numbers and the wording do not match, so just be careful of that. It misidentifies some parts. Not bad, but just in one or two lines there. Okay, so we'll kind of follow those, not really, but we'll follow the schematic. For the grease, I'll get through this real quick, so if you're not interested in this stuff, you can fast forward through it. The grease I used was a Lumar grease from West Marine. I'm guessing you can use some other waterproof grease or white lithium or whatever you want. It was easily available. Oil, we're going to be just oiling the pawls and spring and pawls. That's the oil I used. Again, you could probably use 3-in-1. This was I think 15 bucks. This was probably $8, a little pricey down there. You can maybe try Defender, see if it's a little bit less expensive. Some Lanacoat, I had this. We're going to use that just for the final assembly there to the winch base. And on this breakdown, I'm going to replace the springs. My pawls, from previous experience, I've actually already broken this down once. I decided not to replace the pawls. They weren't that worn. If you want to replace them, you can buy them at Home Depot. The pawls are around 10 bucks a piece, or for about 40 some odd dollars. These were about 10 bucks for 10 springs. I can get another season out of these pawls, I think, so I'm just going to replace the springs, which did make a difference. So if you're going to don't want to replace anything, try to maybe at least replace those springs. You'll notice the difference in them. Okay, so that's all of our supplies. As far as the tools go, in order to get the winch off the boat, you need to take this drum nut off here. It has two openings there. The directions, and everybody says you can use a winch deck plate, or excuse me, a deck plate to get those off. None of the deck plates I owned fit these holes. These holes were too small, so I didn't. Those didn't work. Another option you can find on the internet, or you can find right here, is to just use a screw that will fit, or a bolt that will fit into that hole, and a winch handle. And this proved to work the best. And again, you just kind of basically winch that around on the winch handle. Whoops. let's see if I can do this without spinning everything in the winch. Basically, that'll just wrench that around. Need to be left-handed here. Basically, when you winch that around, that'll wrench that nut around and spin that off. Hopefully you'll see that. Heavy. Okay, that was that. I did go through about, probably I'm guessing 3 or 4 of those. You can see it's kind of bent. But, you know. So, anyway, don't use a tool or something. If you use a tool, it'll jigger your tools up. Don't use a tool. Other tools I used was a rubber mallet to get this winch off the boat. Also a torch, some WD-40, whatever I could find to try to loosen this stuff up. I ended up having to drill one of the cap bolts out that hold the winch gear housing to the base. The base isn't here. The base is left on the boat. Other tools we're going to use real quick are a couple of screwdrivers to get a base plate off. You'll see that. Small little hammer to help with that. And I did use a cat's paw, but just to wedge the winch off the boat. That helped a little bit. Again, or not again, why I keep saying that, but also you'll need a winch handle, a locking winch handle. This locking mechanism doesn't work anymore, to help you with getting that off the boat. I'll show you in just a sec. So those are the tools you'll need. Of course, gloves. If you don't have them, you don't need them. But the nitrile gloves work nice for solvents. They don't dissolve in the solvent. But if you have just latex gloves, those will help you out, keep oil off your fingers, your hands. But they will break down in the solvent, in the diesel that we use to clean this. So you also need diesel and the little 1-gallon bucket that you can get from, I don't know, probably Home Depot or the paint store. That actually worked pretty nice for my winch to fit right inside it, so I could carry it on and off the boat without dropping anything in the water along with your parts. And then I used it to clean the winch too. Okay, so those are all the parts and tools that you'll need, I believe. And maybe some rags and paper towels. Those always help, but that'll get you going. Okay, now for the breakdown. To get this off the boat, like I showed you with the winch handle there and the screw, that will loosen your nut here. And then we spin that off. Try to do this so you guys can see it without blocking with my left hand and my right hand. Pull our drum nut off here. The drum will slide up off that winch, and there are 2 large bearings underneath it. Just make sure those don't pull off, or if they do pull off, just make sure you don't drop them in the water. We'll set that aside. And then we have our 2 large roller bearings here. These will slide off. 1, 2. As you can see here, I'm going to put gloves on in just a sec, but as you can see here, there's our 4 holes that hold the gear housing here to the winch base. And when you take this off, you can leave the base on the boat. That doesn't need to come off. The only trick here, when you pull this off, again, if you use a locking winch handle, you can lift up with it. This gear here will catch underneath the winch, the base of the winch. So when you pull it off, if you try not to pull it off this way, try to pull the winch off this way, and it'll kind of pull out from underneath the lip. It might not make a whole lot of sense now, but if you take a look at your winch, it will then. Okay, so that's that. Let me throw some gloves on, and I'll come right back and we'll start taking this thing apart. Okay, gloved up and ready to go. I don't think I mentioned the Allen wrenches you need. Allen wrench for the winch base bolts are 1/4 inch. That's 1/4 inch Allen wrench. For everything else, we're going to need a 3/16 Allen wrench to get everything off. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, and I'm not going to follow those instructions. You can follow them if you want. I'm not going to follow them verbatim anyways. But first thing we're going to want to do is remove our gear plate here. Not sure what number that is on the schematic, but I think it's 3. We're going to take off these 3 bolts here, cap bolts. Again, that's a 3/16 Allen wrench. That wasn't 3/16. And we're just going to wrench those off and loosen them. Okay, so now once that's done, we'll need to take this plate off. In order to do that, we'll use our screwdrivers and our hammer to wedge this plate off. It doesn't come off easy. It's captive on these dowel pins here, 1 and 2, or 2 and 1, whatever, and also these gear spindles. It's on there pretty good. You just got to get a screwdriver in there and just wedge that off, work it around. And I'm going to do that outside, not on the table, because we need to work it up, work it a little bit, pound on a little bit. So let me do that. I'll take it off, get it ready, and we'll come back once again. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Again, I just got the screwdriver in there, tapped it with a hammer, and worked that around. The plate will eventually come off. I don't think you need to be too gentle with it. It's a pretty stout plate, and the gears are very stout. We'll set this stuff aside. Okay, for disassembly here, goes pretty quick, and it's pretty basic. Mine was pretty gooped up with grease when I took it apart originally. This has already been cleaned once before. But we just start taking things off. This is in your schematic there, the large needle bearing. I don't remember all the numbers here, but this is that spacer I told you might fall out. Let's get that aside. One thing we should probably finish doing, we need to take one more cap nut off. That's this one that holds the main shaft in there. That will, as you notice, spin those gears. So in order to do that with my hand in front of it, spin those gears. So we will take a winch handle, throw it in there, and then just wrench that off. I'm doing this lefty. Probably should have shot this over my left shoulder rather than my right. But that's easy to see there. That will slide out, and that loosens up our main shaft, which is this one back here. And we can kind of push it. No, I guess we can't. Hold on. Well, my winch handle doesn't lock. If it locked, I could pull that out. But we'll just start pulling gears off. There's a cover plate. That is a ratchet gear that I pulled off. Just be careful when you pull that ratchet gear, I should have said, and you don't pull your pawls off here, off your idler gear. Or excuse me, that's not an idler gear. There's our main shaft falling out. Just start pulling gears off. This is the idler gear with a medium needle bearing inside of it. That will slide out. This is the only part that kind of gave me any, made me question anything, I guess, or was just different. You can see this ridge is larger than this ridge, or more proud. When mine came off the winch originally, that larger or more proud ridge was facing, which would be down on the winch, and when I put it back together, that's the way I put it back. When we reassemble, I'll show you why or if that makes a difference. It really doesn't. Here's our main shaft that will come out along with a bearing that was in the top here. Another needle bearing, and we'll separate those. And these have been greased up probably a little too much. This is the center shaft pinion that comes out along with another cover plate. It's called, looks like a big washer. And there's our pawls and gears and how they should work. And in this job, I'm going to break it down. We're going to replace these springs. That's the purpose of breaking this one down. Sound okay? Okay. Again, the ratchet gear. Be careful when you slide this off, so you don't pull your pawls off with it. Set that aside. Both ratchet gears are identical, by the way. There's no difference in the ratchet gears. The pawls will run a disassemble as well. These have the springs in them, of course. So when you do it, just try to capture that spring if you're not replacing them, especially. And slide that off. The spring will separate. Let's see if I can show you the spring. There's the spring. I'm not sure if that's focusing for you. Got some sunlight coming through here that's giving us a weird shadow, but maybe that's visible there. That's an old spring. These are the pawls coming off. And again, these weren't worn that much. Here's my phone, sorry for that. These I don't think are worn that much. I don't think these need to be replaced. Another season on these should be fine. Or so. I don't even know how old that is. I've had the boat for 3 years and never replaced it, so it's older than that. Maybe I need to use the boat more, huh? Okay. So again, we'll take all those off. I don't need to show you all that right now. There's another medium needle bearing here. Here's your small needle bearing resting on this gear spindle there. And that's it for the breakdown. Now we're going to put everything in that bucket I showed you earlier. I'm going to douse it with about a gallon, half gallon diesel, or your favorite solvent, whatever that is. Don't use gas. But you know, kerosene. Get it real scrubbed up nicely with the brush, with a toothbrush is what I use. The only area I had an issue with, if you see the captive pins on the needle bearings there, the 3 silver colored ones on this bearing, those are the only spots. The captive, it's a little bit smaller than the roller bearings there, the needle bearings. Those are the only spots I found that held any gunk. Everything else came off pretty well, just soaking in diesel. I just soaked it overnight, not for any reason other than I just didn't have to have time to do anything else. So that's that. Let me get reassembled or reorganized here, and then we'll reassemble this winch, put it back together. Okay, show you real quick how to replace these springs. Pulling out the old pawls and the springs. See how that one popped out? Just be careful. Set those aside. Oh, that one. See, be careful. They'll spring out. Those I wasn't too careful with because I'm replacing them. I didn't care if I lose them, but you might want to try making sure they don't pop out. Clean these up a little bit. For some reason I have too much oil on these. Okay. New spring. The long leg, I guess, goes against the pawl there. And just like that, that helps. My fat fingers are in the way, I can't tell. This might not come out well. I just kind of hold it in there, slide it down, just like that. Okay, we're back after cleaning. I just filmed a quick segment on how to install the springs and the pawls in each of these. That can either take from just a few seconds to 20 minutes to get each of those in, just depending on how thick and chubby your fingers are. Mine happen to be pretty chubby. Oh, the one thing I didn't show you, that's a little washer that'll pop out of the center shaft pinion there if yours didn't fall out. Mine held captive until I did pop it out. That can stay in, come out. If it stays in there, just leave it in there at this stage anyways. Okay, so now we're going to assemble both the center shaft pinion and the final drive pinion with the ratchet gears. And as this schematic shows you, there's a little drawing on there, shows you which way those gears go in relation to the pawls. Essentially, both of these are the same, the ratchet gears. The ratchet gear can be installed either this way or this way. And you should be able to see the difference there. And just make sure you install it the right way. This is the correct way here. And that just makes sure our pawls catch, right? So let's assemble both of these. Get that done and out of the way. And if you didn't already, you should have greased everything. I can show with that grease. I can show you what I used. There that is again. Okay. The grease I used, which seems to be a little bit too much. Well, I already showed you the grease I used. That was the grease, and I just used a small chip brush you can get at Home Depot or Paint Store or West Marine for triple the price of either of those other places. And I just put a little bit of grease on there and wipe everything down, the roller bearings mostly, and I did hit the gears just because. You might not need to. The only other stage of this thing at this point, as far as oiling goes, we take our oil and give our little pawls a little oil to keep them working nicely. And I should probably see if I can. That's probably a little too much there. Yeah, that's okay. That'll work. Okay, so now we'll start reassembling. And again, it's pretty straightforward. If you want to follow those directions, you can. Otherwise, I'll just do it how it makes sense to me. If you hadn't already, take an inventory of all your parts. If you want to go down the schematic list on the schematic, or if you can remember. But basically, as far as bearings go, there's going to be 4 of the needle bearings, what are called, and then just 4 sizes of the 4 sizes of bearings altogether. Of the needle bearings, there's going to be 4 of the medium needle bearings. That's a medium. 1 of the large needle bearings. That's the large. It's just slightly larger than the medium. And 1 of the small, what are called needle bearings. It's pretty obvious which one that is. And then 2 of the larger roller bearings. And those, you know where those go. They go on the drum. Final. So we'll start with a medium bearing. Insert it into the top of the winch there. Your main shaft comes next. And that should go right in there. And just let it sit. We'll spin that around. So we can assemble it here. And if you want to follow your schematic or go by your own common sense, this is another medium needle bearing that will spin onto the bottom here of the main shaft number 9. Next comes what's called a cover plate. Looks like a big flat washer. There's 2 of them. Number 16 is this one, and number 15, whoops, is this highly greased one. And we're just going to slide the one with the larger hole on first. Next will come our center shaft pinion and ratchet gear assembly, which is not that one, but it is this one, right? That's the number 6 on our schematic. That's going to have the ratchet and the pawls faced up, essentially on the winch, and that's just going to slide right over there. Just get those gears engaged on the main shaft. That washer, if you did take it out, put it back in. And now I'm going to go ahead and install the screw, because that'll hold the main shaft on there while we're moving around. Of the cap screws that held that plate on and held the bottom together, there's 3 sizes. 2, I believe, are 5/8. 1 is 3/4. You see those? 2 5/8, 1 3/4, and then the one, I don't know what that is, maybe 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches, whatever. It's a larger one. That one goes with the sleeve. We're going to use the 3/4 inch. It's pretty obvious which one it is. And we are going to put that in there. And tighten up. And if you remember, we're going to need to use the trusty old winch handle on this. And we're just going to slide that in. And keep our gear from moving around, tighten it up. I didn't use anything on this screw, Loctite or anything like that. I don't think you're going to need it. Maybe you will, I don't know. I'm not going to use it. Okay, so once that's assembled, that's an easy part, right? We're going to take our center shaft. Oh, we put that one on already. We're going to install bearings on our gear spindles here. Again, these are all these two are the medium needle bearings. One on there. The smallest needle bearing goes on this shaft, which is called by the cutout opening in the gear bay, in the gear housing. And then we are now ready for our what's that, the main? No, it's not the main. That's the final drive pinion. And this one needs to go with the pawls facing down. And that's just going to slide over that. Just make sure our gears line up in there. And that's that. Pretty simple. Okay. Next is our idler gear. And if you remember, this is the one I said that was a little bit different than the others in that the two ridges, right? One ridge was more proud. This one is a little bit more narrow. And once it's installed, you can see it'll flush out here. It flushes out with all the gears when it's installed with the larger ridge, more proud ridge down. If you install it the other way, it fits in just perfect, but the gears are a little bit more proud there. They don't line up. Now when you tilt that upside down, are the gears going to drop? Yeah, or right side up, I should say. The gears will drop. I don't know what's correct, but I do know I took it out this way with the larger ridge facing down. That's where I'm going to put it back on. I don't think it's going to matter too much either way. The next is your cover plate. I think that's number 15. That goes on there. And finally, the largest of the needle bearings, that goes right here. And that's essentially it. Now we put the cover plate on and tighten everything down. The only other issue we have as far as parts that go is our spacer. The spacer is going to go right in here. If you can see that right there. Obviously it's not going to stay there. Well, maybe it will if I tilt it, but let's try it. So we want that on there. Now we use our longest cap screw. I'm just going to set that in there to hold that spacer. And it does work pretty well. Put our other two cap screws in. Those are going to be the shorter ones. I think they're 5/8. And our longer one here. I'm going to turn that up, right, or upside down, I guess. And use that 3/16 to tighten this down. Now I'm not gonna show you this. I'll tighten it down off camera, but essentially we just want those snug. We will take that small mallet I had, and I'll tap these down and tighten these two screws first, those two screws first, and then tighten that one last. But I just want these tapped down over the dowel pins. Too much of a hassle to wrench it with the Allen wrench, but if you want to do it that way, that's fine. So I'm going to tap it down, tighten those up, and then I'll be right back and we'll finish this puppy up. Okay, it's kind of snug down. Again, I just took upside down, just tapped that plate down onto the dowel pins and gave it a good tap there. This thing's pretty stout. I don't think we're going to bend anything by tapping it with that hammer or any other screwdriver or anything else. So just giving these a final crank on here. That was going to take a little longer than I thought. So fast forward this maybe. Cranked on that. And we'll just tighten these two first. Crank that down. And this one last. Crank that down. Okay, so that's that with our gears. Everything's working now, with the exception of the drum it's not on, but those gears will spin nicely. Get them off the table and you can see them. First and second gears there. A little bit of goop in there. Okay, and you can hear those springs nice and solid. A lot better than they were. Like if I didn't say it before, do replace the springs. I left the old springs in here and it was definitely noticeable putting new springs on, so it's worth the $10. Okay, so now we're going to go back down to the boat and install this onto the boat. Obviously I'm not going to do that right now until I can get down to the boat. 1/4 inch cap screws going on. Again, you need to slide this gear underneath the housing first, kind of in there. The only other thing you might want to think about is put some Lanacoat on these surfaces, both the horizontal and the vertical surface there, vertical, horizontal. And before you put that on, mine were kind of corroded together, so maybe that'll help when you pull it back off next season. But once you get that back on the boat, get it cranked on again with a 1/4 inch Allen. Finally, your two roller bearings go on, largest roller bearings. Our drum goes on last. If you want, get a little bit of grease in there, just because it's metal on metal. It might quiet it down a little bit while you're on the boat, if you don't care. Doesn't matter. That goes on. This goes on. We'll spin that on. And again, put our screw in a hole and crank on that with the winch handle to get that tightened up. So that's it. That's all I got. It wasn't really that hard. I think it's a little bit, you see the schematic, it looks a little harder than it is, but once it comes apart, it's pretty obvious how it goes back together. So happy sales. Cheers. Still nothing. This one. Yeah, well, see why my winches don't work that great. Didn't work that great. They will. Very slow to pop open.